Haganisinga. Welcome back, everyone, to Rising Warriors Rachael Kulei. I am Nabi Mia Dachinap, woman that travels with the stars. And I have my beautiful mother and business partner in Zimee Wellness Center, Indigenous Sovereignty, coming back and joining us. And today we are going to be talking on a very important topic that isn't very spoken about right now. And we felt empowered to speak on honoring womanhood. So I'd like to welcome back Rochelle Kulei, our elder professor, and welcome. Join me.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm glad that you invited me, and that this is a great topic about something we don't discuss very often, and that is our moon cycle. And in Western culture, and in Europe, it's known as a period. And I was thinking, where did that terminology come from? Periods. And like my Greek wedding, fat Greek wedding. What is it called?
My big fat Greek wedding.
My big fat Greek wedding, yeah. And everything, there's a root it's a Greek root. So, so that perihodos, it's a meaning around, it has a meaning that it's a path. It means around and a way, a path. And then eventually it changed in the Latin, then adopted it, and then it became then it had a meaning, periodus, meaning reoccurring cycle.
Mm.
And so that's the beginning of how things started to change. But in every culture throughout the history, there was either a negative connotation or a powerful message and a uplifting, had a meaning of uplifting women and that sacredness of the role as in womanhood. I'm just going to read a quote because why did this change and how did this become a taboo? And especially for indigenous cultures throughout the world. But right now I'm just going to speak in what I know in the Shoshone and other tribes, but everyone who has their own teachings about the cycle. But how did menstruation become taboo? And so I got this from an article called The Clue. And it's I'll read it real quick. Menstruation stigma is a form of misogyny. Negative taboos condition us to understand menstrual function as something to be hidden and something shameful. And by not naming a thing, we reinforce the idea that the thing should not be named. So then, again, when we talk about history and how other countries that came here to have their own ideas, and then religion, and then that's where that taboo, the shaming came from, where then it changed like the whole dynamic of our culture, especially when they had to go to boarding schools. And so what was once celebrated then became a taboo, it became shameful. And I see it trickling. I see things changing in indigenous country, the Indian country, but at the same time, we still see some beliefs that I notice that are adopted from the Western ideology. So I wanted to give you an example of how this trickles down into beliefs in indigenous country and in Indian country, because I'll give an example. I once was, it was my first or second year in Sundance. I went to my first ceremony, And I had just finished my cycle. So first of all, I'll call it the moon cycle, because reason why we call it the moon cycle is, our bodies are flow just like the moon, right? The moon always has a cycle, and so do women. So we don't call it period. To me, period just seems like end all, that's it. And it just feels harsh. Whereas the cycle of the moon makes sense why we flow through it, at just like the earth, right? The Mother Earth. We go through that cycle like the ocean, the sea, and moving, right? And so anyway, I was in Sundance, and I had finished my cycle. And in Sundance, you're not supposed to be on your cycle at all. And I had finished my cycle, and I wasn't supposed to start, and I was always like regular. But for some reason, it might have been the heat. There's so many stressful elements that was like affecting my body, and I started mooning. And so I went to the Sundance later, and they, I never knew what this was all about, but I just knew, that I wasn't supposed to be mooning when you're in Sundance, because that's what I think Auntie Barbara told me. She's like, okay, make sure you're not mooning, and you're not close to it. If you know you're going to be starting within a week or two, don't even go. Or if you're finished, that's great, then you can go. And so I was clear, but I started. And so I had to gather all my things and go out. And so did my cousin. And she hadn't even had one for like 6 months or something. Like she hadn't been regular. But so that we went out, and we had to have our own moon house. So they build you a shed house, like a help me out here,
oh my goodness,
our
like
own,
a little small little arbor,
our own little arbor. But here's the thing, is that so we were away from the people on the, from the Sundance area. But we got blamed for things that were happening. Like some people were getting sick, and we were blamed for that, even though we were taken out of that situation, and we were shamed for it. And I'm not trying. I just wanted you to know that these are some trickling beliefs that come in to play in our own culture, and how it had changed when Western, the Europeans came and settled here, and that thought, and how they changed our beliefs and our change. We were forced to make changes, right? So as I was in Sundance, and I didn't understand, because I was taught that the cycle was sacred. But then I got shamed for having started my mooning, but I had no control. I did not know that was going to happen. So then what happened from there was, but at the same time, so beautiful in hindsight that I could see, because it was Auntie Barbara and Uncle Leo, and they felt inspired. They were both in different places. He was out in the field farming, and she was cooking, and they both were inspired and told that they needed to drop everything, that they needed to go support family. So they thought it was one of their nephews who were in Sundance, that they were going to go support. And I hadn't met them yet. I just heard about them. And so as I was in the moon house, and we got to come out and sit in our own area, they were told to come to me. And so they walked over to me and got their chairs and they sat there with me. And they began to talk about, Auntie talked about the sacredness of womanhood, that there was no reason to be ashamed of having the mooning and the cycle, because she said that was the most powerful time for us as women, and to honor that time. And it was the most beautiful reunion with them. And my mother was there, and so she knew them, and she grew up with them, and she knew them, so they introduced them. And but then the whole time they were there for those 3 days, staying with me and visiting and teaching me so many beautiful things that I would have never had received had I been in the Sundance arena the whole time. So I'm telling you this story because another time later in Sundance, I had a really wonderful experience, and our great grandmother came to me, and she had told me and showed me the sacredness of womanhood and the mooning and the cycle of that. And she was telling me, she's like, you tell those girls, and she means everyone, females, you tell those girls that they need to be in control of their moon cycles. And she was telling me how anciently, long time ago, way before, hundreds of years, long time ago, and Rachel, you could share that too, because we were together as in our cycles. We were able to flow. You know how in our home and as women come together, our cycles change, and all of a sudden whoever's maybe the dominant,
the alpha,
the matrix, yeah, it ends up that everybody starts to have the same cycle. So we were always on the same cycle. So but so that happened, and everyone was having that beautiful cycle together. And that was the time she said, because of the power that we hold as women, as caregivers, as we absorb the energies and we hold that space. And she said that with that, then the cycle is about purging the painful times that we have when we are mooning, are the time is the release of that negative energy, all the absorptions that you took from everybody. And sometimes they are very excruciatingly painful, are the times that you're releasing, that you don't realize that you took so much on, holding space for people and absorbing their energy. And that's the time that it's so important to purge, to release. So she talked about that releasing, that it was a sacred time, but long time ago, when people knew everyone was on that cycle, those who were very ill would come and bring their people, their sick people, and come, or needed blessings, they would come and be around the women, because that they were able and had the ability to heal. So she said that she's like, tell those women, tell those girls, she didn't say women, tell those girls, okay, that they need to own their power. But there's some things you have to do. One is she said, stop blaming your period on your bad moon, your bad mood that you're in, and you're yelling at everybody, and she's like, you're taking down the house. She said, just like you can heal and give power and help others, and that's your strongest moment, she said, you could do the opposite too. You can take everyone down the house. Everything's going to happen, and I know this. And you changed the whole dynamic of the household, your work, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that we needed to be aware of the dynamic of our power. And she said that we need to start owning it and stop blaming that irritating moment, and those emotions, start to be in control of them, because that is when we need to stay in silence. Now, Native people had it right long time ago. I remember when I was younger thinking, well, how mean it was. I was thinking, oh my gosh, the women had to have their own moon house, and she had to be in there for days, and she couldn't engage with everyone. I didn't have that understanding, and I thought, that's so mean. You have to be segregated. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, we had it right. I mean, I would have loved to have been in the moon house for days with no children, not cooking, not doing cleaning, and just focusing on that power and reflection, right? And to give my body a rest. And so Grandma, she says, she's like, those were the days that was a time to, it wasn't about shaming. It wasn't about secluding you. It was about honoring that time and that womanhood and the mooning and the power. It was about honoring that and giving you the time and the space, because that's when you're like, okay, I can't be in control of my emotions. I might just tear everybody's head off maybe, but that was a time that everyone got to have a break. It's not just, it's not just the female in there, but everybody else got a break. I'm like, whew, thank God she's in there. But then the women, when they knew someone was on their cycle, supported. So it's not like the families are being abandoned. The women helped each other. That, oh, okay, it's her turn, so we're all going to go help her. But then I know that I'm going to get that same, respect and honor too, and they're going to help me. So it was not like, oh, well, she never gives back. We're always helping her. She never helps us. But it was not like that. It was, we all helped each other. Oh, let me take care of your kids. Let me help you cook. And so that was a time that we could be quiet and silent. And I'm like, I wish we should have built one, Rachel. We would have been happy.
At least for me and Jacqueline.
Yeah, I'm done. Yay! But now I had to figure out, okay, how does a woman in menopause, how do they, what's the role for us? We'll have to discuss, that's a whole nother topic.
Mm-hmm.
But at this moment, it's about growing and owning that beautiful power and not to be shamed about that. And so Grandma said, take care of ourselves. That that's the time to start resting. That's a time you shouldn't ever have to cook either. Mm-hmm. Because, that energy is in that food. And we've been taught, whenever you're working, whenever you're, serving the community, never to cook. You shouldn't touch the food. And then, or drumming. Don't be around the drum when you're having your mooning and your cycle. Don't touch the drums. Not because we're casting voodoo or hoodoo or whatever, bad vibes on it. It's because we have that power and we have to respect and honor the drum. So that was a lesson I didn't learn until later in my years, until someone taught me. Again, I'm so grateful for elders and for the community who have taught me things throughout my life, learning about these cycles that I wasn't taught, or wasn't really discussed actually. So until it felt like it was shameful, right? Except that mom gently, she would, tell me that how important it is to wrap the napkins, wrap it, don't leave it exposed in the garbage can. And I see that all the time, you go into public restrooms or other people's homes and they just don't take care of it. You need to honor that. It's like hair. You don't throw away your hair into the garbage and just throw it. I always bundle it, wrap, and then I always blow, put it in. So it's just that honoring. So you want to always wrap it and, expose of it without, just being careless about it. So so the cycle is all about, the power of womanhood. And there's it's so beautiful now. There's so many tribes now honoring that, coming into the womanhood. And you do a flower dance in some tribes. They do beautiful ceremonies for that, like the Hopi tribe does these wonderful ceremonies to bring the woman into the circle and into the womanhood. And so it's really nice to see many tribes are doing this, or going back to what they knew. And so that's pretty much about what I wanted to talk about. It's about womanhood and not to be ashamed of that. And also my Grandma Fern, she was totally against the happy period. The happy period. And she's like, I don't understand why they show on commercials, that you should keep going when, you see those sports, like you still have to keep competing, you still have to keep going and going. Well, she's like, that's not right. It's time to rest. Your body needs healing. And we're so blessed to have that ability to purge. I'm not sure how men can do that, how they don't have that gift like we do, and I'm so grateful for that. She was against the birth controls that stopped you from having periods, because she's like, that this is not good. It's going to hurt us. It's going to hurt those young girls. They don't understand. They need to have the periods. They need to have the menstrual cycle. They need to have that purging to release the negative energies that they're holding and that they absorbed. So she was totally against all the new ways of trying to control your menstrual cycles. And so we need to think about that. We need to think differently and start honoring the time, and when you do ceremonies, and understanding that it's not a bad thing. We need to embrace the beauty of that power that we were gifted, right? We were gifted to have that, to celebrate. It's a celebration. It shouldn't be shameful voodoo experience. We should be so grateful for having those moments. And I think I'm kind of out of words a little bit, but we should honor that monthly moon.
Now I have another thing too, because someone just commented here that says we men make societies and inventions. Women make babies and dinner.
Uh-huh.
Not in my house.
Women make dinner. Well, but women that are good cooks, maybe.
Right?
Or but I had a friend, he got this right. He would put on the calendar for his kids, and he would say this is a special day for their mother, and he'd write on the calendar, and he says special day. Everybody's going to be really extra good because it's a special day for mom, and he would put it on there, and so the kids knew this, and so they would be extra, happy, be extra clean. They were like this for that moment. But he understood and had this great respect for his wife and what she went through. And I always remembered that and thought highly of him and thought he gets it. And but it is a time to just honor that our bodies, and we keep going and going and going and forcing ourselves, but that's not what nature's about. It's time to own that power and to grow and understand our role as women, and to own that power. It's so important to just give each other that space as we are having to purge through these cycles. And so it's important that we understand that and bring to the traditional teachings on the moon.
I want to touch a little bit more on birth control, because once, when I was younger, I remember I was on birth control, and you would always say, Rachel, like you need to have your mooning, but and that it wasn't good for me. But at that time, I was trying to protect myself. But at the same time, I started now, being older, I start to see and realize what that birth control was actually doing to my body. And I'm watching, like, so I have one of these, I'll call her my niece. She's going through all of these different things with her birth control, and the emotions that just keep coming and coming and coming. And it's like you were talking about with the purge. So now we have these people that are just they're not purging. So then, like, I remember that. So it's like there was like this emotional roller coaster ride that I ended up going on, if you remember too. But then it also started, there's other things we could get into that was throwing off my hormones and my thyroid. And, one caused cancer. But the importance of that, but also, I'm not saying that birth control shouldn't be used. I mean, there is important uses for that, but at the same time, the explaining more of that understanding of what that does to you when you don't get to purge.
I feel like, when we're not doing that and we're not cleansing, then what happens is I think it bottles up tension. I do remember a time, and we blame that on, oh, she's a teenager, whatnot, or a young adult, it's hormones, but you're not cleansing, it's almost like you're stagnated. You're at a spiritual stagnation, physical, emotional. You just like come to a halt, and there's like anger and frustration, especially when you're meant to be having that purge. You're meant to have that cleansing every month, that cycle, and then there's a halt to that, and now I feel like spiritually we get angry because we can't let it go. We don't know any other way to release it because we put a halt to it. So now that just changes us, or the whole dynamic of our emotions and the psyche and our spirituality as well. We know deep inside that we're not going through the flow like we should be. We're not living our lives freely. It's just bottled up. Well, then we have what? Trapped emotions, right? We start to get sick. We get anxiety. We get depression. We start to have all of these emotional breakdowns because we're not releasing the way we're meant to do. And so I feel like, I'm not saying what anybody should do for birth control, but I just know that it's not good to just halt your cycles. You cannot do that. It's so harmful. And we need that because it is a spiritual cleanse as well. It's not just a physical, spiritual, mental, physical. We have to purge. We have to release that energy. So I feel like, we need to be careful. We need to have those cycles. I know it's an inconvenience. Just give yourself. This is the thing, is we're in society now, and we have to continue to we still have to work. We still have to, go about our daily routines, but maybe during that time, give ourselves permission. Because if we don't, there's a payback for that. Our body's like, oh, you don't want to acknowledge us. Therefore, I think we're going to end up being sick. We're going to end up with cancer. You're going to end up with infections. You're going to end up with, depression, anxiety. There's so much that I don't think there's enough studies on it. But we don't need that, and we just rely on our traditional ways and the teachings. We should understand that. It's no different from nature, and study nature. That's what we're supposed to be like. Think about the clouds, the accumulation. It builds and it builds and builds. And what happens if it doesn't release? What will happen? It's got to let it go sometime, right? And then that's meant to cleanse, right? I love the rain. I love, you've got the symbolism of the thunders behind you in your painting. But all about letting go, releasing, and that we need to pay attention to nature because nature teaches us. And it's important that we listen to our bodies. And also not to respect each other, give each other some space, and to own it. If you're irritated, then you got to let everyone know, hey, I'm irritated right now. I'm going to calm down in a minute. I think I'm just going to go over here by myself. Don't take it personal. I'm going to just remove myself because I'm not in control.
That was going to be the next thing I was going to ask is, what are some tools that you've had to do over the years when you were younger, especially like dealing with at like the point where you had, I think there was 8 of us, and all of the cousins or your nieces, and just those moments versus like I can't remember like the time, like I don't know if it was around your mooning, but you snapped at the police officer because everyone with all the girls and Jacqueline, they were all screaming and yelling, and you had a migraine, and you told him to save it, but that's a whole. I don't know if you want to share that story. But,
well, I could, but go ahead and finish what you were thinking about.
But going through these different things, because I've seen, you know, even I can go back from my childhood, different, like your own growth in how you handled the mooning cycle. And but even now, as I got older, I started to realize that when you went drill sergeant on us, and you wanted the house fixed, spot clean, as I got older, I started realizing that's when you were on your mooning, is when you wanted everything in order and everything in, just like drill sergeant. It was like being in boot camp. And but then over the years, then you go from that, and then, you know, fast forward like 15 years with Jacqueline, and when that mooning cycle happened, it was like completely like night and day. And Michael and I would be like, she's getting away with murder. But not really, but just the difference of how you even grew, and what were those tools and those things that you started to use. um, because as you got older, and talking to you, when I became a step parent, you would say, just pick and choose your battles. She was like, Rachel,
Mhm.
if I would have known a little bit, you know, back then than I did now, it's just, you know, I'm pick and choose my battles. I'm like, but how does she get away with this? And but now I understand, being older now. But what are some of those tools and those things that you did to help you when you went through those moments when you wanted to just rip our heads off and tear everything apart and put everything back in order, versus let, you know, like, all right, like um we're going to be a little bit more lenient in some of those things, or you started putting healthy boundaries up too?
Yeah. Um, uh, yeah, I realized when you guys were smaller, we lived in this 900 square foot house, and there was a lot of people that lived in it. And I needed to have order. I just wanted everything in its place, in order. And so as I got older and realizing what this was about, why did I feel like this needed why I needed order? It was about that same thing, reevaluating my humanness, reevaluating what needed a change, and realizing that that release and the purging also had to be about order. I wanted order. I wanted, in order for to have, we had, I don't know, at one point 7 or 8 people living in the house, right? And so I needed, because I was like the person who made things flow and run smoothly, had to have things in its place so that it didn't feel dirty and chaotic. I needed it to be clean so that when the mooning cycle came, everything was in its place. I knew what dinners were already needed to be done and prepped. And so then it was about then reevaluating what needed to happen before I freaked out
Mm,
about this. So then knowing, okay, I'm going to have the house clean. We're going to have everything in order. Also simplifying. I started to simplify what is the most important and what can I just let go. And um, so then, and not make a big deal of it. It's not that big in hindsight, but when you're in that cycle, you feel like it's so enormous.
mhm.
But then once the purge is over, it's like, oh, what was the big deal? So, so that also, I don't know if you remember, but sometimes on weekends, once a month or two, I would leave. Dad he knew I needed the time, and so I would just go to a hotel,
Mhm.
even if it was like down the street. I would just go to a hotel and stay the night. Not all the time. We were trying to save money at that time to buy property and things, but I would go away. And then as you
Mhm.
guys became teenagers, I would just go stay with a friend, and that was Tracy. So I'd go stay there, the couple days with a friend. And so then that was a way to kind of get out so that I'm not taking it out on anybody and I'm owning my space and it's quiet. But oftentimes, if I don't know if you remember, but I would just go to a hotel and stay there, and then come back home. But it would be during the weekends because that's when Dad wasn't working then, right?
Right.
So I'll go back and one is to eliminate your stress. Okay, so what does that look like? What's so important? What is important for you during that time? Is it about a clean, orderly home? It was for me only because that's how I was raised. My mom, in the military, that's how I was raised. Everything had to be in order. So now that I think about it, all the things I had to do during that time was when she was mooning as well.
And now I do it.
So it's about, again, start watching your patterns. We sometimes just don't pay attention. Start looking at the patterns. What's really important and what irritates you also. So then if you start to look at the patterns, then eliminate things so that when you are in that cycle, it's done, right? Or look at it and go, oh, well, this is my free time. Once a month, everybody, it's free for all. I don't care what you do. Go ahead and eat all the candy you want for 1 week and no sweets after that for 3 weeks. I don't know. Everyone is different. So think about your cycles. Plan a time that you can get away. If you can't afford it, then maybe it's a drive by yourself. If you can't afford that, then go to a friend's house and ask to just stay in a room. Is there someone who has empty space? Airbnb, we got to figure that out. Maybe my house, I have a big yard and you can set up a tent. Or maybe you set up, get a tent set up and make your own moon house and stay there. Everyone will be happy. Yeah. So we have to eliminate all those things and then own, then give the time to pamper ourselves, rejuvenate ourselves, start to really own that sacredness of womanhood and what we do. It's amazing that how much we take on that we are not conscious of. So those are some tools for me. My advice is to do those things and or just give yourself permission to just not do anything. Let the house be what it needs to be, or just pick up after yourself when you're done. And then for me, it's always the kitchen. As long as the kitchen's clean, I don't care about everything else. It just feels clean with the kitchen's clean. And then to give everybody a list, a chore list, so that they help you out. And if you have a significant other, let them know, these are my trigger points. These are the things that are going on that happens to me. Please just be aware of them and it's not because it's not fair for the men either if we're just always so contentious or so anxious.
Or nitpicky.
Nitpicking and just, it's not fair for them. It's not their fault either. We need to remember. They don't understand. And that's, one thing I wanted to talk about, and it just came to my mind, it must be like, don't forget to tell them this. This is kind of I don't know how to say this, but I'm just going to say it, but sex, okay?
Mm.
We should not be having sex while you're on your moon cycle. Guess what? If you're going to do that, guess who's going to take that on too? And men, you guys don't understand. Maybe you're like, I feel very anxious. I feel very, I have tension. I feel, I don't know what's going on. But you take that on. If you're going to do that, you're going to take on that energy. And you don't want to mess with that stuff. So you don't want to keep, you don't have a gift to purge the way women do. So you have got to respect that time during the moon cycle. There shouldn't be any intimacy like that at all
Mm-hmm.
during the cycle.
I've actually witnessed that with my ex-husband, but it wasn't through sex. It was that I was just having severe cramps and pain, and he prayed to know what I was going through and what I was feeling. And I remember all of a sudden he was curled up in a ball, puking, in so much pain. And Uncle Pete ended up coming over there and he's like, "What'd you do?" And he's like, "Well, I just wanted to feel what she was going through." And he goes, "That is why we don't have this." He's like, "This is why men don't have the mooning. We're not supposed to handle this pain and deal with this pain." And he goes, "Why would you ask for something like that?" He goes, "That's just stupid." He goes, "Look at you. You can't even handle it. You're curled up in a ball crying like a baby." But I remember witnessing that because I never that was the first time I've ever heard and seen anyone actually a man go, "Well, I wonder what your pain feels like." And then boom, like literally minutes later, knocked down to the ground, curled up in a ball, couldn't move. And, the uncle had to end up helping him and, uh, releasing that. But at the same time, he also kind of let him suffer for a moment so that he wouldn't do it again. Because I
Yeah.
remember he was like, "Well, you're gonna have to deal with this for a minute while I get some stuff together." And then he just kind of just took his time. You know how he is.
Yeah.
So he just kind of did his thing and took his time, and then got to him when he did, and then helped him. And then afterwards, he was like, looked at him and said, "Don't you ever do that again." And he goes, "Next time, nobody's gonna save you." And but so I just wanted to, because I've seen that experience of it, just even, and it wasn't even through sex, it was just through a man asking, and wanting to know what that pain felt like that I was going through. And, kind of kudos for him for actually wanting to feel that
Yeah.
and, witness, but at the same time, stupid. It's not meant for that. But that's another thing that we can talk about on another podcast is, what comes to mind is the sweat lodge, because that's part of that gift that was given to the men, for that purging time and for
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sacred, connection that we as women have, that we've talked about. I've talked about on the, Star People, podcast, about the cord that women have of the connection of, of bringing those babies and having that direct connection to creator. And so that's one thing we'll do another podcast on, is
Mhm.
that purge for the men in the sweat lodge, and going into that, because that's another sacred place that helps men get to that place of connectedness spiritually, and that purge for them, and that
Mhm.
gift.
Yes.
That's what came to mind. So
Yeah. Yeah. I
we're
love that.
because there are things for men. There's
Yeah.
ceremonies for that for them too, which
Yes.
is beautiful.
Yes.
So is there any last words that you would like to leave with everyone before we end tonight?
Mm. I think for me is how it's just so important to honor our bodies and their gifts, and the creator created our bodies the way it needs to be, and it was meant for us to have these moon cycles. It's meant for us to honor the cycle and not to be ashamed of that and to own that. And when the young girls start, we need to help them and teach them. It's not a shameful thing. It's a beautiful, powerful thing, but we need to have an understanding of our emotions and what comes with that. And we need to learn that and be aware of our emotions and what we are doing and what we say. It's the best time for us to stay silent and just hold that power within ourselves and to teach our children. If you have children, talk about that. What does that mean? It's not a shameful thing. And I know there's a lot of single women that are, mothers that have to raise their children alone, and they don't have that opportunity. So that is still a time that, share with a best friend. Sometimes I need help. Could you help me? Or also teach your children, this is my moon cycle, so I need to stay in silence. I need things to just be calm, so I need you all to participate and help me. And maybe you're going to have frozen dinners all prepped ahead of time. And maybe as girlfriends, prep your dinners ahead of time and put them in the freezer. And that way everyone can feed themselves and you won't have to do so much work. So it takes a lot of planning ahead of time. Recognize what are your needs during that time. Take notes, this month, and then when you do that, start to eliminate some things that are so stressful, and just honor each other and respect each other, and for men to pay attention as well. We need you men to help us and support us. It's not easy, and I wished I could always be in control, right, of the emotions. I remember that time I used to cry about crying.
Yeah.
I would tell my husband I'd be crying. I hate that I can't be in control of my crying. And then, but he never ever once said, "Oh, get over it. Oh my gosh, that's the time of the month he never ever threw that in my face. Oh, you must be mooning. That's why you're in a bad mood. Never. He was extra gentle. He held me in. He would hold me, and he'd just say, "I'm so sorry you have to go through this. I appreciate you. You're doing a good job. Hang in there." Or, "What can I do for you?" Or he'd go get me chocolate, or he would just he was very mindful during those times. And and then he got good at it, knowing that there were more girls coming in the household, and he just understood, and he was not afraid to go to the store and buy personal hygiene things, and he would just go, "Okay, I'll go do it." So, but just hold each other and give each other space and help one another, and have a friend if you're single to help you through this. And you have opportunity or blessed to have a mother nearby, she'll help you. So ask. Sometimes we try to think we think we have to do it all alone, but ask, and then give back in a way to serve them as well, those that are helping. So bring back that traditions, and help each other through those difficult times, and then also powerful times.
Oos. Thank you. Beautiful words.
Thank
I have
you.
nothing to say.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on and sharing your wisdom. about mooning and honoring the womanhood. It's a beautiful topic and needs to be spoken on in beautiful ways and not making us feel like we're dirty or less than. And so
Mhm.
I appreciate that. And thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Have a good night.